What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the JT Sports Podcast. I'm your host, JT. Hope that you all had a very good weekend. I know I did. Can't say the same for Mike Vrabel and Dianna Russini. Since the leaked photos of their alleged affair has come out and has been made public, it seems like this is the only thing that the NFL world cares about. We're going to dive into the conspiracies surrounding the alleged Mike Vrabel, Dianna Russini affair, along with a few other things around the league that has more relevance to what happens on the field. Can you trust Bryce Young and CJ Stroud? Both of these quarterbacks are nearing the final season on their rookie deals, and depending on how good both of these guys are is going to determine how far their teams can go this year. The Ravens have a huge position battle that we have to break down. I got thoughts on the Falcons and Cowboys offseason moves. If you live, eat, breathe, sleep, and die football, congratulations, you have arrived at the right place. We're talking all things football, NFL, college football, 24/7, 365 days throughout the year. If you're a football junkie, make sure that you smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit that bell icon so you don't miss when we drop new content, so you can get your daily football fix in. We are not just a YouTube channel. We are a podcast. You can find us wherever you get your podcast from, on Apple, Spotify. The JT Sports Podcast is available. You can find this episode along with all of our previous episodes in audio format on all podcasting platforms. If you enjoy the content and you want to support the grind, all we ask is that you give us a 5-star review. It takes less than 10 seconds. It's a free way to support the channel. Helps us out a lot. You can follow us at JT Sports _ on all social media platforms. You'll find us on Instagram, X, TikTok. Go ahead, drop a follow at JT Sports _ And without further ado, let's dive into it. I didn't even want to talk about this Mike Vrabel, Dianna Russini situation, but since the football world can't stop talking about it, I feel like I owe it to you guys to give my thoughts on the situation. First of all, there is too many overreactions to this alleged affair. Sure, I'm not condoning cheating, especially cheating on somebody that you're married to. But just because you cheat on your significant other doesn't mean that you got to get fired. And once again, I'm not trying to justify anybody cheating on their spouse. Mike Vrabel, Dianna Russini were both married. They were both freaking and geeking with each other in spite of being married to somebody else. They got caught up at a resort. I believe it was in Arizona. Somebody sniped a picture of them at the pool, then kissing at the bar. And my whole thing with this Dianna Russini, Mike Vrabel alleged affair is, where was the common sense? Once again, I don't understand why common sense is called common sense if everybody doesn't seem to have it. Mike Vrabel is one of the most recognizable head coaches in the NFL. If he's caught up somewhere with a woman and NFL fans, at least a casual NFL fan gets a glimpse of him, they're going to be quick to take a picture of him. So Mike Vrabel, Dianna Russini, they know that they have this secret affair going on that nobody's supposed to know about, and they thought it was wise to go out in public, show public display of affection, and nobody was going to catch on to him. Nobody was going to leak any pictures of him. The common sense wasn't in their favor since somebody took a few pictures of him, sold them to TMZ for a few thousand, and here we go. The whole world knows about their alleged affair. And the thing is, if you're married and you step out, it's wrong. But being corrupt morally doesn't equal a fireable offense in the NFL. There is nothing in the NFL rulebook that says that a head coach must be terminated from his position for cheating on his wife or cheating on his significant other. The Mike Vrabel, Dianna Russini situation is not remotely as close to being the same as what happened with Sharon Moore and the staffer that he was freaking and geeking with. Dianna Russini is not employed by any NFL team. She is a reporter. Mike Vrabel wasn't sleeping with somebody that worked within the New England Patriots organization. So if you're not sleeping with a coworker, you can't get terminated from it. And another thing is these conspiracies that Dianna Russini was the one behind the A.J. Brown trade rumors. She was leaking them to Mike Vrabel. She was working on Mike Vrabel's behalf. That's complete nonsense. Mike Vrabel doesn't need Dianna Russini to give him any information since he works for the Patriots. He is inside of the NFL. He doesn't need a reporter who's getting her scoops from unverified sources within the league. Mike Vrabel gets as close to what you can get to this information without having to be a reporter to do so. If he wanted to find out something about A.J. Brown, he could have somebody within the Patriots organization do that due diligence for him. If anything, Mike Vrabel was the one who possibly could have been giving Dianna Russini some of her big scoops, since she needed Mike Vrabel more, since he's probably the best source she could get direct contact to. Dianna Russini is only as good as what her sources are. And a lot of her sources haven't really given her a lot of reliable information. So you can't say that the Dianna Russini and Mike Vrabel alleged affair was collusion, it was tampering, because Mike Vrabel has more reliable information about what's going on in the NFL than what Dianna Russini does. An NFL head coach like Mike Vrabel doesn't need to rely on Dianna Russini for information about what's going on in the league. He's in the league. He is the source. Dianna Russini relies on Mike Vrabel for possible inside scoops, possible intel that she couldn't get from anywhere else. That's how these relationships work, not the other way around. Imagine being an NFL head coach and you're relying on an insider and Dianna Russini to give you information about other teams. You can figure that out yourself. You're a coach. You're in the league. You're in the club. You don't need people like Dianna Russini. People like Dianna Russini need folks like Mike Vrabel who are in the club, because they have information that she wouldn't be able to get access to from anywhere else, from anybody else. The tampering allegations that are being thrown on Mike Vrabel and Dianna Russini because of their alleged affair are just complete nonsense. A head coach does not need information from a reporter because he's in the league. There is no reporter that has better knowledge within the NFL than what a head coach does. What the hell does Mike Vrabel need Dianna Russini for? Nothing. He was just getting his nut off. He was just freaking and geeking with her. He didn't need her for anything else. Meanwhile, you got her making these weird playlists, these weird polls, these weird indicators in these interviews alluding to her affair with Mike Vrabel. But none of that has anything to do with the information that we've already know about A.J. Brown. It's not impacting how the Patriots perform during games. It's not negatively harming the Philadelphia Eagles. A.J. Brown wants to get traded because he just wants a fresh start elsewhere, and he loves Mike Vrabel, and it just isn't working out in Philadelphia anymore. Dianna Russini wasn't the person who made A.J. Brown want out of Philadelphia. He's not the reason why he wants to get traded. The only thing she does is report on what everybody else knows or what the public has yet to find out. NFL teams tell Dianna Russini stuff that they don't care about people knowing. There is nothing that Mike Vrabel can get out of Dianna Russini that he can't get for himself and get more accurate information. And another thing, The players in the locker room don't care about Mike Vrabel cheating on his wife. There are nearly 80 to 90 NFL players on the roster in the offseason. These guys all have their own thing going on in their personal life. There are other players on the team that might be cheating on their significant other. You never know, but these guys care about if Mike Vrabel is a good coach, can he coach them to the best of their abilities, and does he care about them? And he checks all three of those boxes. The players on the Patriots love Mike Vrabel. They'll go to war for this dude any day, any place, anytime. You heard Drake May, Christian Gonzalez, and several other key contributors on the New England Patriots roster speak in favor of Mike Vrabel and them voicing their support for their head coach. There is nothing that's going to come from this situation between Dianna Russini and Mike Vrabel. There are too many overreactions to this. There are people that cheat on their significant other every day. The only difference is that Mike Vrabel and Dianna Russini, they are public figures. They got caught out in public. Dianna Russini got fired because as somebody who graduated from a journalism school, when you are a reporter, you are not supposed to have intimate relationships with a source. Mike Vrabel is a potential source. It's a conflict of interest. That's why she lost her job. Mike Vrabel gets to keep his job because there's not a rule in the NFL rulebook that says head coaches can't cheat on their wives with reporters. I'm sorry, but that's just the honest truth. You show me otherwise where in the rulebook it says you're not allowed to be a head coach and step out on somebody that you're married to. I'm not condoning it, but that's just the rules. The NFL doesn't care about morals. It's a business. They care about, can you win? Can you help the team win? And Mike Vrabel just had the Patriots in the Super Bowl. And do you guys not know who the owner of the Patriots is? Who cuts the checks for Mike Vrabel? Who Mike Vrabel's boss is? It's Robert Kraft. This dude was just having his own freaking and geeking session a few years ago with some massage therapist on his Deshaun Watson timing. So if you have Robert Kraft as your owner and he already has his own dirty things going on off the field, this dude isn't finna care that one of his employees has some dirt going on in the offseason too along with him. If anything, he was probably laughing with Mike Vrabel about it. He's probably like, man, welcome to my world. You feel me? Nothing's going to happen of this Mike Vrabel, Dianna Russini situation as far as punishment on him. And there's no evidence that Dianna Russini had information that helped Mike Vrabel win this year, that helped the Patriots. There's no information that she could have gotten from anybody else that Mike Vrabel couldn't have gotten himself, and the information actually be more accurate and more believable than what Dianna Russini was getting. So I came across a quote from the Carolina Panthers general manager Dan Morgan, who recently told SiriusXM that the Panthers have internally discussed what a Bryce Young extension could look like. And there's an uncomfortable truth that Panthers fans have to accept when it comes to the possibility of the Panthers extending Bryce Young to a long-term deal. You see, the issue with Bryce Young is he's not bad, but he's not good either. However, he's more closer to being a bad quarterback than he is closer to being a good quarterback. And the big problem with Bryce Young is his highs are good enough to talk yourself into believing that he is the franchise quarterback of the Panthers. He is good enough to win the Panthers a Super Bowl. But Bryce Young's lows make it very hard to trust giving him a long-term extension right now. And if the Panthers give Bryce Young an extension before this season, it'll be a gigantic mistake. It'll be just as bad as what it was for the Dolphins when they gave Tua that mega contract extension a few off seasons ago. Yes, Bryce Young has improved, but improvement doesn't justify you getting a contract extension with you still not proving that you can be the franchise QB for the next 10 years. Bryce Young hasn't proven that he can lead the Panthers to a deep playoff run. Bryce Young hasn't even proven that he can give the Panthers consistently good quarterback play on a week in and week out basis. 1 week, he's dotting up the Atlanta Falcons. The next week, the brother can barely get over 100 yards passing against the New Orleans Saints and gets outplayed by Tyler Shuck. Just because Bryce Young improved last year doesn't mean that he all of a sudden is good enough to warrant getting a long-term extension. Bryce Young is not trash, but he still isn't as good as what a first overall pick is supposed to be. And the Panthers have to look at themselves in the mirror before they give Bryce Young a contract extension and say, is this a quarterback that we're going to pay and we're going to end up eyeballing other quarterbacks after, saying that, you know, we could do a lot better? Because when you look at Bryce Young, sure, he's good enough, but he's not going to be good enough to keep you from thinking about possibly doing better. And that's the issue that the Panthers are going to run into by extending Bryce Young. He's solid, but when you have a solid quarterback, you always are looking to do better, because the old saying goes, if you can do better, you do better. And when the Panthers end up coming up short in the postseason, or they end up underachieving in the future of Bryce Young, everybody's going to finger point to Bryce Young being the reason why the season didn't go the way that it was expected to. Bryce Young, when the Panthers come up short or when they lose big games, he's always going to be the first person that people blame, because people know that despite how solid of a quarterback Bryce Young may be, his ceiling isn't high enough as what a Lamar or a Josh Allen is. And that's what you're supposed to get when you spend a first overall pick on a quarterback. Sure, if the Panthers put the perfect situation around Bryce Young, he can win a Super Bowl. That's most quarterbacks in the league. But for a number one overall pick, you shouldn't need as much to go right. You shouldn't need as much in your favor to be successful as what Bryce Young needs. This dude is already the smallest quarterback in NFL history, probably the smallest midget quarterback that the NFL has ever seen. I'm very shocked with how functional Bryce Young can look at times, in spite of the limitations that he has to overcome, just being the smallest quarterback ever. But with the Carolina Panthers, even if Bryce Young reaches his full potential, he's like the 13th or 14th best quarterback in the league. That's still not good enough to keep you from believing that you can do better. If you give Bryce Young a 4-year extension, somewhere between $30 to $35 million a year, that's a solid extension. But if you're giving him market value, like $40 million plus or more, then that's a massive overpay. Because Bryce Young, in spite of him improving last year, he was still a bottom 20 quarterback in the NFL. That is not what you expect for somebody who you gave up multiple picks for, Christian McCaffrey and DJ Moore, to get. The problem with Bryce Young is you're trying to convince yourself, if you're a Panthers fan, Bryce Young can be trusted to win you a Super Bowl. And that can't be further from the truth. To win a Super Bowl, you need your quarterback to put together 3 or 4 consecutive good games. Bryce Young can't do that. Bryce Young hasn't even had no more than 8 weeks of looking at least like an average quarterback. Sure, he doesn't look like a bust. He doesn't look worse than Jamarcus Russell like how he did 2 years ago. But improvement doesn't mean that you now are good enough. Improvement just means you're better than what you used to be. And the floor for Bryce Young was really, really bad. You couldn't do anything but get better compared to how bad Bryce Young was his first 2 seasons in the league. Like, there were games when Bryce Young couldn't even get the offense across the 50-yard line until midway through the fourth quarter in garbage time. So for him to go from that to looking like a halfway decent starting quarterback, tremendous improvement, but not enough improvement to warrant getting a long-term extension, at least right now. If Bryce Young puts together a season where he consistently week in and week out looks like a top 16 quarterback or better, it's justified to give him an extension. Sure, you expect more out of a first-round pick, and the Panthers, regardless, are still settling, because Bryce Young is never going to be as good as what a first overall pick should be, and the Panthers have to accept that. But they keep trying to lie to themselves and say that, yeah, Bryce Young is really turning the corner. Sure, he's turning the corner, but he's not turning into what he was promised to be as the first overall pick. And you can't trust Bryce Young every single Sunday. He can ball out against the Rams and the Falcons, but suck it up against the Saints. And the Panthers don't have a terrible team. They have the most complete team in the NFC South. They got a good offensive line. They got plenty of receivers. They got good running backs. They got a good head coach. They got an improving defense. There isn't as perfect as a situation as Bryce Young can get. Then the Carolina Panthers outside of putting him on the Eagles and the Rams. My problem with Bryce Young is he's not my definition of what a franchise quarterback is supposed to look like. When the Cowboys lose, you can't always blame Dak Prescott for being the reason. Most of the times, Dak Prescott is the reason why the Cowboys even had a shot at winning. But when the Panthers lose, there aren't too many losses that the Panthers have where I don't say, yeah, Bryce Young is the reason why they lost that game. When they lost to the Buccaneers, the final game of the regular season, they lost that game mostly because Bryce Young didn't play that good. On the other end, when the Buccaneers lose, I'm not saying, yeah, they lost because of Baker Mayfield most of the time. That's what a franchise quarterback is. Even when you lose, he's not the reason why you lost. He's the reason why you had a chance to win. I'm not saying Bryce Young needs to be elite, but he's supposed to be elite, so you're still settling regardless. And if you're going to give him market value for what these current quarterbacks are getting, if Daniel Jones getting $44 million, giving Bryce Young $45 million should have Dan Morgan and the rest of the Panthers front office thrown in jail. Because that's a robbery they just allowed to take place. Because Bryce Young hasn't proven himself to be worth an extension. If Bryce Young has another good season where he improves and builds off what he did last season, then I'll have no problem with the Panthers giving him an extension, committed to him long term. But you can't look at me in the eyes with a straight face and tell me that you trust Bryce Young to string together 3-4 good games in the playoffs to win you a Super Bowl when this dude is the most volatile quarterback in the league. How can you throw for damn near 500 yards against the Falcons, look unstoppable, and then get outplayed by Tyler Shuck? That's why the Panthers can't pay Bryce Young. They're paying him based off the highs, but they can't trust him long term because of how bad the lows are. The Ravens got a real competition at wide receiver right now after drafting rookie wide receivers Jacoby Lane and Elijah Surratt in the 3rd and 4th rounds of this past year's NFL draft. Now, the conversation isn't about who's competing for wide receiver 1. We know that Zay Flowers has that thing locked up. He's the Ravens' unquestioned wide receiver 1. Yes, he is a true wide receiver 1. He had over 1,200 yards. He had a 115 passer rating when Lamar was targeting him, and he was responsible for over 50% of the Ravens' target share. Zay Flowers is already the undisputed wide receiver 1. This is about who's going to be wide receiver 2 behind Zay Flowers, because you see Rashad Bateman, after his breakout season in 2024, when we thought Rashad Bateman finally turned the corner, he was finally living up to his first round potential, he reverted back to the old Rashad Bateman. Can't stay healthy, inconsistent, really bad drops in crucial moments. Now with the additions of rookies Jacoby Lane and Elijah Surratt, when Rashad Bateman inevitably ends up missing time with injuries again, his misfortune is going to turn into either Jacoby Lane's or Elijah Surratt's opportunity. Who's going to be the one to take advantage of it? I think by the end of this season, Elijah Surratt will be the Ravens' wide receiver 2. I like him a lot more than Jacoby Lane because, for one, he's a better route runner. He gets open. He creates a lot of separation. He has good hands. And when you think of the majority of the best receivers in the NFL, at least the receivers you consider to be elite, receivers that you consider to be top 5 wideouts, what the majority of them all have in common is they're phenomenal route runners and they can get open. Jacoby Lane is more so of a good 50-50 ball guy. He's going to be very good in the red zone, an area of the field that the Ravens struggled in offensively last year. You can just throw it up, he can go get it. And there's nothing wrong with having a wide receiver like a Jacoby Lane. I like Jacoby Lane. I just don't like Jacoby Lane more than I like Elijah Surratt. Elijah Surratt reminds me of Keenan Allen. Not a burner, not a great athlete, but he's just so technically gifted running routes that he's always going to be a good security blanket for Lamar Jackson. When you got brothers that can just run routes good and get open consistently with a lot of separation, it's hard not to find a way to get them the football. Zay Flowers is much more effective when he has a guy like Elijah Surratt on the opposite side of him, because a guy like Elijah Surratt, sure, he's not going to kill you over the top, but he's going to beat you underneath, which allows Zay Flowers to have more big play opportunities over the top, along with Mark Andrews. To me, Elijah Surratt has the best chance to become the Ravens wide receiver 2 at the end of this season when Rashad Bateman ends up getting injured, or he just ends up getting demoted due to inconsistent play. I like Elijah Surratt because if you have somebody that has a Keenan Allen kind of skill set, you got to be a very good receiver. Now, Jacoby Lane, I'm not going to discount him and act like he doesn't have a shot at this thing, because there's nothing wrong with having a guy that you just throw it up and he can go moss somebody forward. I love receivers like Mike Evans and Brandon Marshall, but the Ravens just need somebody who can do a little bit more dirty work underneath, and that's what I feel they're going to get out of Elijah Surratt. Now, these aren't the only 2 wide receivers that are going to be in contention for the wide receiver 2 spot. You still got LaJohntay Western, who a lot of Ravens fans who attended Ravens camp last year said that he was the best wide receiver throughout the entirety of training camp. He more so is going to be in contention to be the Ravens starting slot receiver. We know LaJohntay is very good after the catch, evident by the success he had as the Ravens punt returner last season. Then you still do have Devontae Walker, who I think is more so of a deep threat. Not like a Jacoby Lane, but more so just a burner. I'm going to send you on the go. I'm going to send you on the fly. I'm going to send you on the post. If you burn the guy, I'm throwing it your way. But I think that out of all the receivers that the Ravens currently have right now, Elijah Surratt is my pick to end this season as their wide receiver 2. His nickname is Waffle House for a reason, because he's always open. And when you're always open, I trust that more than trusting a guy like Jacoby Lane, who more so is living off jump balls. I don't think living off jump balls is an efficient way of sustaining a good passing attack. So I like Elijah Surratt to end this season as the Ravens wide receiver 2. Shout out to everybody that's tuned in wherever you're watching. Do your brother a favor, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit that bell icon so you don't miss when we drop new content. Shout out to my guy Chisley7863 in the chat. He says, good evening, everybody. Good evening to you, my friend. Give the podcast a 5-star review. You can find this episode along with all of our previous ones in audio format on all podcasting platforms, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast from. The JT Sports Podcast is available. The links are down in the description below. Give us a 5-star review if you enjoy the content and you want to support us. It's free to do. Greatly helps us a lot. Check us out at JT Sports _ where you can find us on Instagram, X, TikTok. We post bonus content, updates with the show, the platform. We interact with you guys in the DMs. Go ahead, follow us on Instagram, X, and TikTok at JT Sports _ is where you can find us on all of those platforms. I think the Houston Texans can win the AFC Championship this year, despite the lack of trust that many of you guys have in CJ Stroud. The Texans defense is good enough to win a Super Bowl by itself as long as the offense doesn't F it up. That's what Kyle Shanahan said before the Super Bowl this past year between the Seahawks and the Patriots. Kyle Shanahan said that there were 2 defenses good enough to win the Super Bowl by themselves if the offense didn't F it up. The Seahawks and the Texans, what were the difference between the 2 in the playoffs? The Seahawks won the Super Bowl because Sam Darnold didn't F it up. The Texans got bounced in the division round because, unfortunately, CJ Stroud was looking like one of Santa's helpers out there, and he was giving the Patriots early Christmas presents with the amount of turnovers that he was coughing up. But the Texans are only going to go as far as what this defense can take them. And this defense can take them very far. And they don't need elite quarterback play from CJ Stroud in order to do so. This is a historically good defense. This is a S+ tier defense. The Texans and the Seahawks both had historically dominant defenses last year. The Texans, unlike the Seahawks though, they didn't lose any major contributors. The only thing they did was upgrade this side of the ball even further. So you take a defense that already was historically good, that was the second best in the NFL, and you add a Reed Blankenship, you draft that defensive tackle out of Ohio State. There's so much talent that the Texans have added to an already dominant defense that this defense doesn't need CJ Stroud to even be a top 15 quarterback. All the Texans need out of CJ Stroud this year is to be a good game manager. Limit the turnovers, don't make bad mistakes, and let the defense do the rest of the work. The Texans this year remind me of the 2017 Jacksonville Jaguars. That Jaguars team that season had Blake Bortles. He wasn't that good. CJ Stroud can be a lot better than what Blake Bortles was for the Jaguars in 2017. The Jaguars made it to the AFC Championship that season in 2017, not because Blake Bortles was good, but because he didn't turn the football over. He was a good game manager. The defense did a lot of the heavy lifting. As long as the Jaguars' offense was average, the defense was going to win them the majority of games that they played just because of how stacked and how talented that side of the ball was. The Texans can replicate the same thing that the Jaguars did in 2017 with Blake Bortles, with CJ Stroud being a much more effective quarterback than what Blake Bortles was that season. Hell, the defense damn near still almost won them the game against the Patriots in spite of all of the turnovers that CJ Stroud was giving up. Every time CJ Stroud turned the football over, the Texans defense would come right back on the field and say, don't worry, CJ, don't worry, Coleridge, Bernard Stroud. We're going to get the ball back to you. The problem with how folks view CJ Stroud is they're judging CJ Stroud based on how his story ended last year, and they're ignoring the beginning and the middle of CJ Stroud's story. CJ Stroud is still a very good quarterback, but he's being defined based on how last season ended. You can't define a quarterback based off how it ends. You have to judge the overall body of work. CJ Stroud has won a playoff game every year that he's been in the NFL. And Justin Herbert has yet to win a playoff game, but more people give excuses for Justin Herbert than they do CJ Stroud, in spite of CJ Stroud's offensive line not being that good. The weapons around him outside of Nico Collins not really being that good. The run game not being that dependable. They make all the excuses in the world for their golden boy Justin Herbert. But yet, when CJ Stroud has a bad game, he gets thrown under the bus for it. But Justin Herbert is 0-3 in the playoffs, had a game himself where he threw like 4 interceptions against the Texans, and they made all the excuses for him. But yeah, CJ Stroud is the reason why the Texans can't win it all this year. When you have a defense this good, like this Texans defense is probably 2000 Ravens levels good. If the Ravens can drag Trent Dilfer to a Super Bowl win with how good their defense was, the Texans can do the same. We've seen the Broncos win the Super Bowl 11 years ago when Peyton Manning, his right arm didn't work anymore. So you can still win a Super Bowl if you have a historically great defense, which the Texans are going to have that year. But CJ Stroud is still a solid quarterback. He's a top 15 quarterback in my eyes, and that's good enough for the Texans to win a Super Bowl this year with how good this defense is going to be. This Texans team reminds me exactly of that Jaguars team that lost to the Patriots in the AFC Championship in 2017. The quarterback play was okay, but the defense was outstanding. And that's what the Texans, to me, are going to be this year. And that's why they are my pick to win the AFC Championship. Even though you can have your doubts about how good is CJ Stroud actually? He's not going to be bad enough to where he's going to completely sell the season for the Texans like how he did last year. I want to give my thoughts on the Atlanta Falcons offseason moves. The Falcons got a tremendous upgrade at head coach by hiring Kevin Stefanski. He's been to the playoffs 2 times with the organization that hasn't really had that much success in the Cleveland Browns, and he did it in the toughest division in the AFC North. Kevin Stefanski made it to the playoffs with Baker Mayfield, and then the second time with Joe Flacco fresh off the couch, in the division that had Mike Tomlin and John Harbaugh along with Joe Burrow in it. So there's no questioning if Kevin Stefanski is an upgrade from Raheem Morris. He's a definitive upgrade from Raheem Morris. You have a coach that has a better resume, a more respectable body of work than what you have from Raheem Morris. Raheem Morris didn't have too many glimpses of success before he got the Falcons head coaching job his first go around when he was the head coach of the Buccaneers. Kevin Stefanski is a guy that's been to the playoffs 2 times. He's won Coach of the Year twice. So you're getting a way more proven head coach than what you did in Raheem Morris. Unfortunately, despite the Falcons upgrading that head coach, their roster severely downgraded. Now, I'm not saying they suffered major regression, but for the past 2 seasons, I thought that the Falcons had arguably the most talented team in the NFC South. They had a good offensive line. They had some really good weapons. Drake London, Kyle Pitts. You had Darnell Mooney, who was a very solid mid-tier wide receiver too. We know what Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier were capable of. The defense was pretty good last year. But the offense this year, though, has regressed from a personnel standpoint. The biggest loss that I felt the Falcons suffered outside of losing one of their starting offensive linemen to retirement was losing Darnell Mooney in free agency. Sure, Darnell Mooney wasn't a superstar, but he was a mid-tier wide receiver too. And you lose him and you downgrade by replacing him with Jahan Dotson, one of the worst wide receivers in the NFL at getting open and creating separation. Then you bring back Olamide Zaccheaus, who has some success with you for a few years, but this dude's 5'8", and he's mainly playing in the slot. You downgraded that wide receiver. Sure, you bring in Zachariah Branch, but he's more so of a yak guy. Can you find a way to get him touches behind the line of scrimmage? Can you find a way to get him the ball out in space? And Zachariah Branch definitely could become the Falcons wide receiver too as early as the end of training camp, and he could be pretty productive, but with a team that already has a huge red flag at quarterback, you don't help the quarterback situation. You don't do Tua and Michael Penix any favors by downgrading with your wide receiver too. And the quarterback room is more so a bridge stopgap situation. I don't think that either Tua or Michael Penix are the long-term solution at quarterback for the Falcons. Now, I love Michael Penix. I'm still rooting for Michael Penix, but he's had so many injuries already from college and now in the NFL. And even when we've seen Michael Penix playing, he's been healthy. He hasn't really been all that. He's been all right. But if you had to choose right now as a Falcons fan, would you rather have Michael Penix or Tyler Shough? You're probably taking Tyler Shough. At least he can stay healthy. He has more mobility and more upside. With Michael Penix, he ran like a 4.5 at his pro day, and it shocked me because I didn't even know with how those knees were looking, he was even capable of even being able to run a 4.9. But you can't really use his mobility. He's a statue in the pocket. Michael Penix and Tua are the same quarterback. It's just that Tua has a weaker arm than Michael Penix. Michael Penix can fit deep balls and tight windows. He can throw that whole shot and cover 2 late. He can throw an out route late. But even if you start Tua, you're not going to go that far with him. At best, he gets you 8-9 wins. Michael Penix has a higher upside than Tua, but a lower floor than what Tua has. Now, with Kevin Stefanski being a run-first coach, emphasizing the run game, we know Bijan Robinson is going to put up prolific numbers in Kevin Stefanski's scheme, so the quarterback play doesn't need to be that good. If you can just take care of the ball with how weak the quarterback play already is in the NFC South, you got a very good chance of still being able to compete for the division title. But it's just with the run game being the focal point of the offense, the Falcons are putting more pressure on their defense to not just perform as well as what they did last year, but to even be better. The Falcons need a top 5, top 7 defense to be a playoff team this year. When you have uncertainties at quarterback with a run-first coach who prioritizes ball control, and you're going to be taking a lot of time off the clock, when you have empty possessions due to your quarterback play not being good, you're going to have to lean more on your defense to bail you out. And the Falcons' defense is the strength of this team. Their defense is even better this year than what it was last year. They made one of the best picks in the draft by getting A.J. Terrell's little brother and Avion Terrell. One of my favorite picks because not just does he fit an immediate need that the Falcons have, they needed another number 2 corner alongside of A.J. Terrell, but I mean, you can't get better chemistry than adding 2 brothers on the same team. So you got A.J. Terrell, Avion Terrell, along with Jesse Bates, Billy Bowman, and Xavier Watts. The Falcons have one of the best secondaries in the NFL, and nobody talks about how good it is because nobody really pays that much attention to how good Xavier Watts and Billy Bowman were since they played for the Falcons. But this defense has to carry the Falcons to the playoffs this year. I do think that the Falcons have the most talented defense in this division, despite the losses that they've suffered on the front 7. They got pass rushers. They got good corners. They got very good safeties. It's just the offense is what ultimately could be the downfall for the Falcons this year, especially with the loss of Darnell Mooney in free agency, being unable to upgrade the wide receiver room. Sure, you still got Drake London, Kyle Pitts, and B. John Robinson, but the Falcons' offense got worse from a personnel standpoint. The Saints and the Panthers have been making big moves on both sides of the football. What's the Falcons' big move this offseason? Getting Avion Terrell, that's cool, but you need a lot more. The Falcons went from being arguably the most talented, second-best team in the NFC South to now being the least talented team in this division. Now, talent doesn't guarantee success, and the coaching of Kevin Stefanski, if you're a Falcons fan, you're banking on that being able to make up for the talent differential that you have. And that very well could be the case, even though I don't think Kevin Stefanski gives the Falcons that big of a coaching advantage as compared to Dave Canales or Kellen Moore, since both of those guys are pretty solid coaches in their own right, and they have slightly better teams. So for the Falcons this offseason, you regressed a little bit. Not a lot, but on offense, you still haven't figured out your quarterback position, really. You lose a little bit on the offensive line, and you lost a very solid wide receiver too. So I'm not really the biggest fan of what the Falcons did this offseason. I want to give my thoughts on the Dallas Cowboys offseason moves. Last year, the Cowboys were watching the NFL playoffs from the comfort of their couches because their defense had them sitting at home due to their defense being one of the worst defenses in all of football. And that's saying something. I thought the Cincinnati Bengals defense was bad. The Dallas Cowboys said, hold my beer. They were dead last in points per game allowed. How are you scoring nearly 28 points per game, which was 5th in the NFL, but scoring just as much as what you was giving up on defense? If anything, the Cowboys were better off putting some of their starters on offense or defense with how bad that side of football was playing. And obviously, Jerry Jones and the rest of the Cowboys front office knew that they are a defense away from being back in playoff contention, which is why this offseason, they invested most of their resources, most of their draft capital, most of their money into rebuilding this side of the football. And you kicked off the rebuild by replacing Matt Eberflus with new defensive coordinator Christian Parker, who has been on the Philadelphia Eagles staff for a while under Vic Fangio. And normally, when you hire Vic Fangio disciple, they normally pan out pretty well. Now, they do have their fair share of misses, but there are a lot more hits from the Vic Fangio coaching tree than there are misses. Christian Parker, he's going to bring more versatility to this defense. You're going to have a more aggressive attacking defense, which is going to help you get more pressure on the quarterback. You're going to be much better at stopping the run. Then you sign Jalen Thompson in free agency, which is probably the best free agency move the Cowboys made this offseason, since Jalen Thompson was pretty solid when he was with Arizona. Just didn't get enough respect or attention because the Arizona Cardinals are irrelevant and the Dallas Cowboys are America's team. And you pair Jalen Thompson up with Caleb Downs, this is going to be a very good back end of the secondary that the Cowboys are going to have going into this season. Caleb Downs allows you to have somebody that can play near the line of scrimmage, who can play in the slot, who can play that star position, or you can play him at safety, whether it be single high, two high. You can use him as a nickel dime linebacker near the line of scrimmage. There's a variety of different ways that Caleb Downs is going to improve the Cowboys defense. Caleb Downs, to me, coming out, he was Derwin James 2.0 with just how versatile his game is. Just having him on the field improves the Cowboys' run defense and their pass defense. Then they also traded for Rashawn Gary. They drafted a lot of help on the pass rush. So there's a good amount of talent and depth there. Sure, you could still be a little bit better there. You would have loved to get a Max Crosby or a Trey Hendrickson, but you still got Quentin Williams. So the Cowboys defensively, they're looking a lot better now than what the hell they were last season. I mean, I didn't know what the hell Jerry Jones was thinking. He was trading for all these first-round busts, Kenneth Murray, Ka'ir Elam. I get trying to take the flyer, but you can't be America's team and try to be last chance you. You got to go out there and get some dogs. And the Cowboys, this offseason, I felt like they went out there and they got some dogs. Now, they signed Kobe Durant, former starting corner for the Rams. Like, he's not good, but he's better than Trayvon Diggs, so that's saying something. I mean, he's all right. You still got Chevelle, the very good corner that was supposed to be a first-round pick in last year's draft out of ECU, but he had some medical concerns. Like, he's still there. You got Demarion Overshaw. Demarion Overshaw is an absolute dog. One of the most underrated linebackers in the league when he's healthy. So I like what the Dallas Cowboys have assembled on the defensive side of the ball. And the Cowboys, they don't need their defense to be elite. I think it's asking a lot of the Cowboys defense to go from being the worst in the NFL to being one of the best in the NFL overnight. But if they can at least be average, that's good enough for them to get to the playoffs, because your offense was fifth in points per game. We have some concerns about Brian Schottenheimer. We knew this dude could call plays, but was he a solid head coach? Well, he's a solid head coach. So if the offense is putting up nearly 28 points per game, all you need is for the defense not to give up 27 points per game. That's doable. 3 points less than what you was giving up last year. Now, obviously, you want the defense to improve as much as possible. I can see the Cowboys being in the 15th to 17th range. Now, they could be a lot better than that, but all you need is to have a top 17, top 15 defense, and that wins the Dallas Cowboys the NFC East this year. I don't trust what the Eagles have going on offense. I love Mekhi Lemon, but I have concerns about Jalen Hurts learning a new system. He's on his second offensive coordinator in 2 years. He's been rotating offensive coordinators like it's been Russian roulette. And then you're losing A.J. Brown, so you're not going to be as star-studded as what you were when you had A.J. Brown. It's a lot of weirdness going on with the Philadelphia Eagles. They still got a good team, but it's more so a coaching and front office thing that I really don't trust. Not Howie Roseman, but more so just the dysfunction between the organization and Jalen Hurts. It's just a little weird. So I trust the Dallas Cowboys a little bit more than I trust the Philadelphia Eagles to win the NFC East this year. And the NFC East has been the Philadelphia Eagles to lose for the last few years. But now the Cowboys, I think their roster is just as good as what the Eagles roster is. Because remember, the Eagles had to replace some guys on defense. You feel me? Even they have a few question marks on defense, as what the Cowboys do. But I trust the Cowboys offense a lot more than I trust the Philadelphia Eagles offense. And I think that's what the difference is going to be. I know that the Cowboys can hang 30 points with ease on anybody. It's kind of a struggle for the Eagles to even get the 20 points it felt like last year. So with the moves the Cowboys have made this offseason in free agency and the draft, right now they're my early pick to win the NFC East. This is it for this episode of the JT Sports Podcast. I appreciate you guys for tuning in. If you haven't already, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit that bell icon so you don't miss when we drop new content. We talk all things football, NFL, college football, 24/7, 365 days throughout the year. So if you're just a diehard football fan and you just love all things football, you come to the right place. Make sure you subscribe. Hit that bell icon so you don't miss when we drop new content. Give us a 5-star review. You can find this episode along with all of our previous ones in audio format on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast from. The JT Sports Podcast is available. The links are down in the description below. Follow us at JT Sports _ where you'll find us on Instagram, X, and TikTok. I appreciate you guys for tuning in to tonight's episode, and I